The grand mansion was quiet, too quiet for a home that once brimmed with life. Jameson Cole, a man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence, now paced the empty halls, a ghost in his own home. His son Elias had been born under a dark cloud, diagnosed with blindness from birth, and for months there had been no change. His cries, his laughter, his first words, none of them had come, only silence. Jameson had tried everything, colors, toys, music, love, but nothing had ever reached Elias. The boy just lay there, eyes wide open but not seeing, not responding. Every morning, Jameson would cradle him close, hoping for a sign, a flicker of emotion, but the silence was deafening. How could the child he loved so much remain so distant? But then Valerie arrived. She wasn't a doctor. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias's condition. She was just a new maid, hired to clean, to care for the house. But when she laid eyes on Elias, she saw something no one else did, something that could change everything. Comment below where you're watching from, and share your thoughts on trust and the people you love. Have you ever had to face a truth that shook everything you believed? Jameson couldn't remember the last time he had truly lived. It felt like ages since he had felt anything beyond the crushing weight of loss. The mansion had become his prison, the walls cold and unfeeling, much like the world he now inhabited. His every moment was spent tending to Elias, but it was a quiet, thankless task. Every attempt to engage with his son had ended in silence. The doctors had said there was nothing more they could do. His son was blind, and that was the end of it. He tried to fill the emptiness with the work of everyday life, routine therapy sessions, phone calls to specialists, but they were all just distractions. At the end of the day, he was still Jameson Cole, alone with a man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence, his voice, his care, now paced the empty halls, with the silence, a ghost. But then Valerie arrived. His son Elias was like a breath of fresh air, had been born under a dark cloud, long forgotten, diagnosed with blindness from the moment she stepped into the house. And for months, something changed in the air. His cries, she wasn't like the laughter, others, his the nannies, words, the caretakers, none of them had come. The professionals who had come and gone. Jameson had tried everything. Colors, she was soft, toys, music, calm, and love, unassuming, but nothing had ever reached something about Elias. Her seemed to connect with the house. The boy just lay there, Elias, eyes wide open, but no one else had, not responding. Jameson noticed how every morning, quietly through the room, Jameson would cradle him close, her eyes seemed to linger, hoping on for Elias a sign, longer than anyone else's. But the silence, he could see the curiosity in her eyes. How could the child he loved so much radiate from her distant? When she looked at his Valerie arrived, there was something about the way she held him. She didn't know the tender and knowing of Elias's condition. That seemed to break through the silence. She was just a new maid. It wasn't just care she cleaned him, to care for the house. Something deeper. But when she laid eyes on Elias, Jameson had long forgotten. She saw something no one else did. Days passed, something that could change, and Valerie began to spend more time with Elias. Her touch was gentle, her voice soft and soothing as she spoke to him in ways Jameson never could. She wasn't trying to fix him. She simply existed with him, alongside him. There was no rush, no expectation, only patience. And then, one afternoon, when she was giving Elias a bath, it happened. Valerie's fingers brushed his face, tenderly cleaning the soap from his skin, when she noticed it. A small, delicate blink of his eye. It was the first time Elias had ever reacted to her. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it real? Had he really seen her? Her heart skipped a beat as she repeated the motion, carefully wiping his forehead with a sponge. Again, he blinked. Valerie froze, her fingers trembling as she gently wiped his skin. This wasn't some random reflex. Jameson Cole, this was intentional. A man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence for the first time in months. Now paced the empty stirred in her chest, a ghost in his own home. She couldn't explain it. She didn't know why Elias had never responded been born before, under a dark cloud. Something had shifted, diagnosed with blindness something inside him had awakened. And for months, Jameson was working in his office when he heard the commotion. His laughter, he had grown used to quiet. None of them had steady routine of the house. Only silence. But today Jameson had tried everything. He walked into the living room, toys, music, and there, love, in the small space, but nothing had ever reached Elias. He saw Valerie. The boy just lay there, arms, eyes wide open. His son was not seeing, not responding. His eyes were focused. Every morning, his small hand, Jameson would cradle him close, trembling, hoping for a sign, a flicker of emotion. But the silence voice was quiet, unsure. How could the child he loved so much remain so distant? Could it be? But then Valerie arrived. Could Elias finally be responding? She wasn't a doctor. Valerie didn't know the technicalities of Elias's condition. She simply held Elias closer. She was just a new maid, her hand shaking as she whispered, to care for the house. He's awake. But when she laid eyes on Elias, Jameson saw something no one else did. He couldn't breathe. Something that could change for a moment everything. Everything around him seemed to blur. The years of waiting, the years of watching his son drift farther and farther away, could be over. Elias blinked again, and for the first time his lips parted. "Mommy," he whispered. Jameson's world shifted on its axis. The sound, the word, the utterance from his son. It was everything he had ever hoped for, but never believed would come. For the first time, Jameson felt the stirrings of hope, the smallest spark of possibility. Maybe Elias hadn't been lost all this time. Maybe the truth had always been just out of reach. Valerie continued to bathe Elias gently, her hands now moving with more purpose, more tenderness. She hadn't expected this moment, this reaction, but now that it was here, she couldn't help the growing feeling of intimacy that seemed to bloom between her and Elias. A man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence. Every shift paced the empty halls, felt like a connection in his own home. Something she had expected, son Elias, undeniably had been born under a dark cloud. Her heart raced, diagnosed with blindness from birth, her breath shallow. And for months, her fingers trembling as she dried his cries, his laughter. She hadn't meant for any of this to happen. None of them had come to care for him. Only silence. Jameson had tried everything to stir in her chest, toys, music, something love, she couldn't explain. But nothing had ever reached Elias. The longer she spent with Elias, the boy just lay there. The more it felt like something eyes magnetic, wide open, but not seeing, something undeniable, pulling her closer to him. Jameson would cradle him close. When she glanced at Jameson, hoping for a sign, she saw a flicker of emotion, something in his eyes. But the silence was deafening. Something she hadn't seen before. How could the child he loved so much remain so distant? A softness that hadn't been there before. She wasn't a doctor. The walls he had built around himself. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias's condition. I never thought he knew Maid. Hired to clean, his voice thick with emotion. But when she laid eyes on Elias, his gaze fixed on something no one else did. He's really here, something that can change everything. Valerie nodded slowly, her heart still racing. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, she felt a surge of hope she hadn't dared to feel in so long. "Maybe now," Valerie said softly, "we can finally see him." As days passed, Valerie's connection with Elias deepened, and the mansion, once steeped in sorrow and silence, began to feel alive once again. The air itself seemed to buzz with newfound energy, a soft undercurrent that pulled Valerie in deeper with every touch, every interaction. She had never imagined that caring for a child, especially one as withdrawn as Elias, would feel like this. But it wasn't just care. It was something else, something powerful. Every moment with him now felt charged, and she couldn't deny it any longer. Her feelings for him were growing stronger, Jameson more complex. A man who had once ruled the corporate world. When Jameson went to study to work, now paced Valerie would spend time alone with Elias, a ghost in his own home, talking softly to him. His son Elias, reading him stories, had been born under a dark brushing his cheek as she diagnosed with blindness. He wasn't just a child for months anymore. There had been no Elias had become an anchor. His cries, his drawing out feelings in Valerie, his first words, buried for years. None of them had come. She could feel his warmth against her. Jameson had tried everything, her own colors, toys, as if he were calling her in a way that she couldn't nothing had ever reached Elias. And it was during one of those just lay there, eyes wide open, but not seeing, not holding him as she had so many times every morning. That Jameson would cradle him close. She had been gently stroking his hair, a flicker of emotion, breath slow and steady. But the silence was deafening. She felt a small, delicate the child he loved so much remained so distant. Touch was subtle, but then Valerie arrived. It sent a shiver of warmth coursing through her body. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias's condition. It felt like a profound shift in their dynamic. She was just a new maid, one that Valerie couldn't quite explain. To care for the house. She leaned when she laid eyes on Elias, brushing her lips against his forehead. She saw something no one else did. A soft kiss that was filled with something that could change everything. His skin was warm, his breathing steady. And for the first time in a long time, Valerie felt the kind of tenderness she had longed for. But with that tenderness came something else. Something deeper. Something that sent a surge of heat through her chest and lower. The sensation was new and unsettling. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. She was his caretaker, his guardian. But the intimacy between them, this shared connection, was beginning to blur the lines. The tender moments, the lingering touches. Valerie had never imagined that they would awaken something so intense in her. Later that evening, as Valerie bathed him once more, her hands moved more deliberately, more carefully than ever before. Her fingers grazed the skin, tracing the soft curve of his jaw, feeling the pulse of his tiny body as it relaxed under James and Cole. She could feel a man who had once ruled the corporate world, the electricity that seemed to spark each time the empty hall closer. A ghost. She leaned down. Her lips brushing the softest part of his ear. Had been born under a dark cloud. You're so diagnosed with blindness from birth. His eyes, for months, there had been clouded with confusion. His cries seemed to laugh ever so slightly. His first words, as if he understood none of them had come. And just as she pulled back, Jameson had tried everything. A faint smile on his lips. Love. The first one nothing had ever reached Elias. It was a quiet curve. The boy just lay there. A fragile expression. Eyes wide open, but not seeing. That not only someone who truly saw him could notice. James for a long moment close. Valerie hoping for a sign. A flicker of emotion racing in her chest. But the silence was deafening. She wanted to pull away. How could the child he loved so much overwhelming emotions that were rising within Valerie arrived. But instead, she wasn't a doctor. She found herself drawn. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias's condition. And as she cradled him in her arms, her breath was just shallow. A new maid, her hands trembling. To care for the house. She realized that she had crossed a line. When she laid eyes on a line that was difficult to return, she saw something no one else did. Valerie wasn't sure something that could change what her feelings for Elias meant, or of how far they had already come. But one thing was clear. She was no longer just his caretaker. She was his sanctuary, his everything. And in that moment, she realized that she had become emotionally bound to him in a way that could not be undone. The nights began to blend into one another. The mansion, once so cold and lonely, now hummed with subtle warmth. The tension between Valerie and Elias shifted as well. But it wasn't just a palpable silence that filled the air. It was a growing understanding between them. She had become Elias's world, and he had become hers. Her emotions, once buried deep beneath years of pain and grief, began to surface with every touch, every whisper. But it was Jameson, his father, who remained a constant presence in the back of her mind. She noticed how his eyes would linger on her when they were alone. A man who had once ruled the corporate curiosity world with flickering in his now gaze. Paced the empty Valerie halls. Had spent hours wondering whether he felt the same connection. His son, Elias, had been born under a dark cloud. He had never spoken with blindness from birth. But Valerie could feel the weight of his gaze. There had been no change. The silent questions, his cries, his laughter. One evening, his first words, while Valerie was sitting in the nursery, only silent, Elias close. Jameson had tried everything. Heard Jameson's colors, toys, music. He paused in the doorway, but nothing had ever reached watching Elias. Them both for a long moment. The boy just lay there, silent, eyes wide open, but not thick and heavy, not with unsaid words. Every morning, I'm not sure what's happening. Jameson would cradle him close. Jameson said, hoping for a sign, low, a flicker of emotion, a mix of uncertainty, but the silence something was deafening. Something the child he loved so much remained so distant. I can feel it. But then Valerie arrived. See the way you care for him. She wasn't a doctor. Valerie cut him technicalities. Her heart beating faster, the raw emotion. She was just a new maid, hired to clean. Something's changing, Jameson. But when she laid eyes on Elias here, she saw something no one else did. Elias anymore. Something that could change. She stood slowly, moving toward him, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch his arm. Her gaze met his, and for the first time, she saw him, really saw him. He was broken, just as she had been. Just as they both had been. You don't have to be afraid, she whispered softly, her voice filled with quiet understanding. You're not alone in this. Jameson's eyes softened, and for the briefest moment, their gazes locked the tension between them palpable. It was more than just a shared moment of grief. It was a spark, an undeniable connection, a promise of what could be. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Valerie understood. She understood that Elias's condition had never been the only obstacle they had to overcome. The truth of their own feelings, their own desires, had always been the hardest thing to face. James, the next morning, a man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence, air in the mansion was thick, now paced the empty halls, one that Valerie couldn't quite place. His son, Elias, nervously, had been born under a dark cloud. The soft click of the door reverberating through the silence. For months, there had been the weight of the previous night lingering in the back of her laughter, but she pushed it away, focusing on the task at hand. Only silence, caring for Elias. Jameson had tried everything. Child she had come to love in ways that made her heart ache with longing. But nothing had ever reached Elias. Was different. The boy just lay there between them, eyes wide open, but something deeper than mere caregiving. Every morning, of the skin under her fingertips, Jameson would cradle him close. The way his little hand curled around hers, but the silence was electric. How could a child he loved so much remain so distant? And it made her pulse quicken. She had spent so many hours with him. She didn't know the technicality of Elias's every motion. She was just seemed to carry an undercurrent of desire that she had no way of explaining. But when she laid eyes on Elias, her breath she saw something no one else did. She realized something that could change. She felt was not just maternal. It was something more, something that stirred within her every time their bodies brushed against each other. The soft, lingering touches, his tiny hands grasping hers, the way his face would press into her chest as she held him, had become a dance she couldn't ignore. She found herself drawn to him in ways that she had never imagined possible. With every moment spent alone with Elias, her feelings for him grew more intense, more intimate. She wanted to protect him, yes, but there was something else, something raw and untapped that thrummed in the air between them, something that left her breathless when she kissed his forehead, something that made her hesitate before laying him down to sleep at night, because the thought of letting go of him, just for a few hours, felt like a loss. And then there were the moments with Jameson, the way he looked at her when she wasn't looking. Jameson Cole, his gaze full of quiet man who had once ruled a corporate world with a tenderness she hadn't seen now paced the empty halls. He was changing, a ghost in his own home. She could feel the emotional walls around begin to crumble. Had been born under a dark cloud. Every time they shared from birth, every time their fingers brushed, no change. The connection was cries, his laughter. She could see it in his eyes. None of them had come. She could feel it in her own silence. The days had tried everything. And the bond between Valerie and Elias grew stronger. But nothing had ever reached their relationship evolved. The boy just lay there, never eyes wide open, but not seeing. She could no longer ignore the heat that coursed through her veins when she touched Jameson him. Would cradle him close, pull that drew her closer, hoping for a sign, passing a flicker of emotion. It wasn't just love. Silence was deafening. It was desire. How could a child he loved so much remain so distant? But there was one more thing that haunted her. One question she couldn't shake. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias's condition. Was it wrong to feel this way about her child? She was just a new maid, no matter the connection. Hired to clean. Valerie had never allowed herself to think. But when she laid eyes on Elias, but now that they were here, she saw something no one else did. She couldn't push them away. Something that could change. The desire had become as much a part of her as her love for Elias. She tried to ignore it, tried to bury it beneath the surface of her daily routine, but it was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to break free. One evening, as she prepared Elias's bath, the tension between them reached a breaking point. Her hands were shaky as she undressed him, the intimacy of the moment growing too much to bear. She had never been so aware of his small body, the soft skin, the tender curve of his waist. As she gently lowered him into the warm water, she felt the heat rise in her cheeks. The urge to lean in, to kiss him, to hold him closer, was overwhelming. But instead of acting on it, she pulled back. She was his caregiver. She was supposed to be protecting him. She couldn't cross that line. She couldn't let herself be consumed by this desire. A man who had once ruled a corporate world threatened to tear her apart. Now, but as she held him close, her arms wrapping around him to wash his body. His son, Elias, she realized something, had been born under a dark cloud. She wasn't the only one diagnosed with blindness. Elias's small fingers curled around her wrist. There had been no change. And for a brief, his cries, his laughter, their gazes locked. His first words, he was looking at her. None of them had come. With an understanding that went beyond his years. Jameson had tried everything. His lips parted slightly as if to speak love, but nothing had ever reached Elias. Gazed up at her. His boy just lay there, silent longing, eyes wide open, and in that moment, seeing, Valerie not responding. The connection between them wasn't just about Jameson would cradle him close. It wasn't just about hoping for a sign, a flicker of emotion he'd been trapped in. But the silence was deafening. It was something the child deeper, he loved so much, something that transcended the physical. But then Valerie something that arrived. Bound them together in ways neither of them could explain. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias's passion. It was just intimate a new maid, understanding that hired to clean, denied, to care for the house. Valerie, but when she laid eyes on Elias, her heart raced. She saw something no one else did, as she something that could change everything. The urge to kiss him, to draw him closer, was stronger than ever. She could feel his warmth against her, could feel his little body moving in sync with hers. It was as if they were one, connected by a force greater than either of them. But when Jameson entered the room, the spell was broken. The energy between them shifted again, but this time it wasn't just about Elias. It was about everything. Valerie couldn't deny it any longer. The tension that had been building between her and Jameson was palpable. She had seen the way he looked at her, the way his gaze lingered on her lips when they spoke. She knew he was fighting it, just as she was, but the connection was undeniable. Jameson's voice cut through the silence, thick with emotion. "Valerie," he said, his eyes locking with hers. "I need to know if you feel it too." Jameson, for a moment, neither of them man spoke. Who had once ruled Valerie's heart with confidence as she searches now paced for empty halls. Did she feel it in his own home? Did she feel the undeniable pull between them? Had been born under a dark cloud. The longing that had been growing between them since the first day she had arrived. There had been no change. Yes. His cries, his laughter, the word was barely his audible, first words, but it hung in the air between them like a promise. Only silence. That night, Jameson had tried everything. Valerie lay in her room. Colors, toys, the music, world outside love, seemed to hold his nothing breath. Had ever reached Elias. The mansion was still. The boy just lay there, only sound, eyes wide open, but not the rustling of the leaves and gardening. But every morning, the air was Jameson would cradle him close, heavy with desire, hoping for a sign. The weight of the day hung over her like a storm cloud. But the silence was deafening. She couldn't escape. How could the child he loved so much the way her heart beat faster every time Elias looked at her? She wasn't Jameson's voice sent a shiver. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias that had been building between them ever since that first moment. Hired to clean, she turned over in bed to care for the house. Her body restless. But when she laid eyes on Elias, the heated sheets clinging to her skin, she saw something no one else did. The thoughts of Elias, something that could change everything. Each one pulling her deeper into an emotional and physical whirlpool that she couldn't escape. She had promised herself that she would stay distant, that she would maintain control. But each time she touched Elias, each time she looked into Jameson's eyes, the lines between right and wrong blurred further. Valerie couldn't ignore the feeling anymore. She was falling for them both, and it was a dangerous, irresistible pull. There was a deep, aching need that stretched through her chest and made her body hum with longing. It was an unspoken truth that seemed to hang in the air, between the quiet moments with Elias and the charged glances she shared with Jameson. They had both become a part of her in ways that she could no longer control. The clock ticked softly on the nightstand, its steady rhythm mirroring the pounding of her heart. Valerie closed her eyes, but the images of Elias, a man who had once ruled the corporate world, Jameson's eyes full of longing, now paced the empty halls to leave her mind. A ghost in she wanted to be with them. His son Elias had been born under a dark cloud. It wasn't just about diagnosed with blindness from birth. It was something deeper. And for months, something that ran through her veins like his cries, his laughter, need that consumed his every thought. None of the next morning, only everything felt different. Jameson had tried undeniable tension between Valerie and both men, but nothing had ever reached charged as she moved through the house. The boy just lay there, movement slow, eyes and wide open, but not seeing, as if the weight of her emotions made every action more purposeful. Jameson would clear the eyes of both Jameson, hoping for a sign, a flicker
but
of emotion.
But it was Elias's
gaze
that
silence was deafening.
warmth through her chest.
How could a child he loved so much remain so
always
distant?
Been there?
But then
today,
Valerie arrived.
There was something
She wasn't
different.
a doctor.
Something
She
more.
didn't know the technicalities.
She could feel it in the way
Elias's
his tiny
condition
hand
would reach for her.
She was just a new maid,
in the way he'd
hired
settled
to
into her
clean,
embrace
to care
as
for
if
the
he
house.
too. But when
Felt
she
the
laid
pull
eyes
that had
on
been growing
Elias,
between them,
she saw
it was
something
Jameson
no one else
who
did,
caught her attention,
something that could
when he
change
entered the room.
everything. His gaze was steady, almost knowing as he walked toward her. There was a quiet power in his presence, a kind of vulnerability that she hadn't seen before. She noticed the way his lips parted slightly, as if he were about to speak. But he paused. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, until he took a step closer. "Valerie," he whispered, his voice low and laced with something she couldn't quite define. "I can't stop thinking about you, about what we're doing here, about what's happening between us." Valerie's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the electricity in the room, the tension that was so palpable it made her skin tingle. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, she took a step forward, closing the distance between them, her breath shallow. "You don't have to say anything," he Jameson
continued,
Cole,
his
a
eyes
man
dark
who had
with
once
emotion.
ruled a corporate
But
world
I need
with
to know,
confidence.
do you feel this?
Now paced
Do you
the empty
feel what I
halls,
feel when I look
a
at you?
ghost in his own home.
It was a question she
His
had
son
wanted to ask
Elias
herself,
had been
but
born
now
under
there
a
was out
dark
there,
cloud,
hanging in the air
diagnosed with
between
blindness
them.
from birth.
Valerie
And
couldn't
for months,
deny it.
there had been
She
no
felt
change.
Every
His
glance,
cries, his laughter,
every touch,
his first
every
words,
lingering moment,
none of them had come.
They were
Only
all building to
silence.
something far
Jameson
more
had
intense
tried
than
everything.
either of them could
Colors,
control.
toys, music,
I feel
love.
but
Valerie
nothing had
whispered.
ever reached Elias.
Her voice trembling.
The boy just lay
But
there.
I don't know what to do
eyes
with
wide
it.
open, but
I
not
can't.
seeing, not responding.
Before she could finish,
Every morning,
Jameson's lips crashed
Jameson would
against
cradle
hers,
him close,
silencing
hoping
her.
for a sign.
The kiss
a
was
flicker of
raw,
emotion,
desperate,
but the silence was
filled with
deafening.
years of restraint.
How
and
could the
longing.
child he loved so
Valerie
much remain
responded
so
without
distant?
thinking. But
Her
then
hands
Valerie
moving
arrived.
to his chest.
She wasn't a doctor.
Feeling the warmth of his body.
She didn't know
beneath
the
her
technicalities
fingertips.
of
The
Elias's
world
condition.
outside faded as
She
their
was just a
bodies
new
pressed
maid,
closer.
hired
The
to
heat
clean,
between them growing
to care
more
for the
intense
house.
with each
But
passing
when she laid
second.
eyes on Elias,
But just as quickly
she
as
saw
it had
something
begun,
no one else did.
the kiss broke.
Something that could
They
change
both gasped
everything.
for air, their faces inches apart, their hearts racing. Jameson's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb gently tracing the line of her jaw. "I need you, Valerie," he said, his voice thick with desire. "I can't fight this anymore." She didn't respond with words. Instead, she closed the distance between them once more, her hand sliding to the back of his neck as she pulled him down to her. The kiss deepened, more urgent now, as if they both understood that they couldn't keep denying what was between them. The desire had always been there, buried on the surface, but now it erupted, raw and unrestrained. As their bodies pressed together, Valerie felt the world shift once again. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. But she didn't care. All she could focus on was the feeling of Jameson's hands on her skin, the taste of his lips, Jameson, the way he made her feel. A man who had once ruled a corporate world with confidence, and for the first time in a long time, halls. She didn't feel alone. In his own home. She didn't feel his son Elias. When they finally broke apart, born under a dark cloud, and trembling, Valerie looked into his eyes, and for searching months, for something there had been no change. There was a tenderness, his laughter, something more than just desire. None of them had come. Something that told her they'd crossed into a new territory. Jameson had tried everything. One where love, colors, passion, toys, music, and longing collided in a way that nothing had ever reached Elias. "I don't want to stop." The boy just lay there, Jameson whispered, eyes wide open but raw, not seeing, desperate, not responding. "I don't either." "Every morning," Valerie replied. Jameson would cradle her voice close, barely audible, hoping for a sign, but a flicker of emotion. She knew that silence was deafening. The beginning of something child far more intense so much remained either of them distant. Could have anticipated. But then Valerie arrived. The next few days she wasn't a whirlwind of emotions. She didn't know the technicalities quite keep up of Elias's condition. Mansion, once filled with cold echoes of grief, hired a now seemed to hum a life, to care for the house. And every step, when she laid eyes on Elias, it wasn't just something no one else did. That was changing something that could change. It was everything. Something deeper, something that resonated through her very being. The connection she shared with him had become undeniable, and with each stolen glance, each brush of hands, Valerie felt herself unraveling in ways she hadn't anticipated. Elias,
too, had changed. His reactions were more pronounced, his gaze more aware, and Valerie could feel the shift every time she held him. The boy who had been locked away in silence was now slowly emerging from the fog, his world opening up to the tender care she provided. But the changes in him only made her desire for both him and his father more complicated, more intense. She couldn't deny the pull she felt for Elias, the way his small body molded perfectly into hers, the way he held on to her as if she were his lifeline. It wasn't just a maternal bond. There was something else there,
James
a longing
Cole,
that flickered in her chest
a man who
every
had once
time he
ruled the
rested his
corporate
head
world with
against her
confidence.
shoulder.
But
Now
it was
Jameson
empty
who
halls,
consumed her thoughts
a
more
ghost
than
in his
anyone.
own home.
The way his son
lingered,
Elias,
the way
had
his
been born
lips
under a
whispered
dark
against her
cloud.
skin,
Each
diagnosed with
moment seemed
blindness
to
from birth.
intensify their connection.
And for months, there
it
had
was
been
as though
no
they were
change.
bound by an invisible
His
thread.
cries, his
The more
laughter,
they gave into
his
it,
first words,
the harder it became
none
to
of them had
fight.
come.
One
Only
evening,
silence.
as the sun
Jameson
dipped
had
below
tried
the
everything,
horizon,
colors,
casting the
toys,
mansion in
music,
hues
love,
of red and gold.
but nothing had
Valerie
ever reached
found
Elias.
herself standing in front
The
of
boy
the large
just lay
bay
there,
window, eyes
in the living
wide
room,
open but not seeing,
looking out at
not
the
responding.
sprawling garden.
Every
The
morning,
wind ruffled the trees.
Jameson would cradle him
sending
close,
a soft chill through
hoping
the air,
for a sign,
but it
a
didn't
flicker
reach
of
her.
emotion. She was
But the
lost in the
silence was
turmoil of her
deafening.
own desires.
How could the child
Wrestling
he
with the
loved so
attraction
much
that had
remain
taken
so
root
distant?
deep within her?
But then Valerie
She could hear
arrived.
footsteps approaching.
She wasn't a doctor.
Slow and
She
measured.
didn't know the technicalities.
She didn't need to turn
of
around
Elias's
to know
condition.
who it was.
She was just a new
Jameson's
maid,
presence
hired
was
to clean,
unmistakable,
to care for the
his
house.
gaze,
But when she
the
laid eyes
intensity
on
of it
Elias,
could burn through
she
her.
saw something
and she
no
felt
one else
the heat
did.
of it even from
Something
across
that
the
could
room.
change everything.
Valerie. His voice was soft, but there was an edge to it that made her stomach tighten. She turned slowly, meeting his eyes. There was something in them, something raw, something that mirrored her own feelings. She couldn't speak at first. The words she wanted to say were caught in her throat, trapped by the weight of everything between them. Jameson stepped closer, his presence filling the space. He didn't speak again, but his gaze never wavered. He was searching for something in her, something that reflected his own yearning. There was no need for words. Valerie could see it in his eyes, feel in the space between them. She was drawn to him, her body reacting to his nearness like a magnet. The air felt thick, heavy with anticipation. "I don't know what we're doing, Valerie," Jameson said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. A man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence. "I can't stop now paced the empty halls." The words hit Valerie like a jolt. His own home. But they didn't his son Elias. Instead, had been born under a dark cloud. Pulse quicken. Diagnosed with blindness from birth. Closing the gap between them, there had been no change. Without hesitation, his cries, his laughter, his first kiss was slow at first. None of them had come. Tentative. Only but as the world around them faded into Jameson had tried everything. Their connection, toys, music. There was no more pretending. But nothing had ever reached no more restraint. The boy just lay there, answer, eyes wide open, but not seeing everything they had been trying to fight. Every morning, their bodies moved together. Jameson would cradle him always close, been destined hoping to do for a sign. A flicker of emotion between them intensified, but the silence was deafening. Kiss grew more urgent. How could the child he loved so much remain Valerie so felt herself lose control. But then Valerie arrived. Her body reacting to wasn't every touch. She didn't know the technicalities. Her hands of Elias's condition. She was feeling just the heat of his skin beneath the fabric of his shirt. To care for the hands slid to her waist. But when she laid eyes on Elias, pulling her closer, she saw something no one else length of him pressing against something that could change everything. She breathed, her voice a whisper of longing. "I want you. I need you." His lips hovered over hers, his breath ragged. "I need you, too," he murmured, his hands moving to her back, pulling her closer. The tension between them had been building for so long. It was impossible to ignore any longer. It was no longer just about the need for physical connection. It was about everything they had both been hiding from. The emotions, the desires, the deep, aching need to be wanted, to be loved. As their bodies pressed together, Valerie felt the surge of desire that had been growing between them finally break free. It wasn't just a passion, the need for closeness. It was a culmination of everything that had been building since the moment she had stepped into this house. It was raw, unrestrained, and deeply emotional. Every kiss, Jameson, every touch, a man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence, A bond that transcended empty halls and entered the realm of the soul, his own home. Jameson's hands moved over her body with possessive had been born under a dark cloud. His fingers tracing the curves of her waist, from birth, her hips, and for months Valerie's body responded to him as if it had his cries, his laughter, her skin tingling under his touch. None of them had come. She felt his breath on her neck. Jameson had tried everything on her skin, colors, toys, she couldn't suppress the moan that escaped her lips. But nothing had ever reached the world outside. The boy just lay there, eyes wide open, but not seeing, not responding. Two souls bound together every morning. Neither of them had expected. Jameson would cradle him close, both of them hoping for a sign. A flicker Valerie's of hands moved, but the silence was deafening. Tugging it off. How could the child he loved so much remain so distant? The sensation of Valerie was intoxicating. She wasn't a doctor, and she couldn't get enough. She didn't know the technicalities. Jameson's hands found Elias's condition, pulling it off with a swift, practiced motion. The fabric slipped off her shoulder, but when she laid eyes revealing the soft curve of her body, she saw something. Valerie shivered as his hands something that could change everything. The touch sending waves of heat through her. She didn't care anymore. She didn't care about the consequences or the boundaries they had once set. All she cared about was a connection between them. Their bodies, their souls, intertwined in a dance they could no longer resist. As he lifted her into his arms, Valerie wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him closer. They kissed again, deeply, urgently, their bodies pressing together in perfect synchronization. Valerie felt the hardness of his desire against her, and it only ignited the flames of her own need. She had never felt anything like this, never felt so alive, so consumed by another person. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and it was only a matter of time before they both gave in completely. When they finally reached the bed, the world around them ceased to exist. Life. All that mattered was the way they moved together. A man who had once ruled the way they gave into the fire that had been smoldering now paced the empty halls. Valerie's body arched against his son, her hands exploring every inch born under a dark cloud, memorizing ways diagnosed with blindness from birth. And Jameson, every attentive change, responded with equal passion, his hands gentle but firm. None of them had come, as if he knew exactly what she needed. As Jameson had tried everything, the world exploded into 1,000 sensations, but nothing had ever reached the pleasure was intense. The boy just lay there, but it was eyes wide open, tender, but not seeing, every responding, every morning. Every Jameson touch would cradle him close, felt like a declaration for a sign, everything they had been hiding from each other. But the silence was deafening. Free to how could the child he loved so much remain so distant? And when it was over, but then Valerie arrived. When the world had slowed and reality would have just transpired. She didn't know the technicalities. Valerie lay Elias's condition. Her breath shallow. She was just a new maid, racing. Hired to clean. Jameson held to care for the house. His fingers when she laid eyes on her back as they both saw something no one else did. I wanted this something that could change everything. He whispered into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. Wanted you. Valerie's heart swelled with warmth as she looked up at him, her fingers gently brushing his cheek. I've wanted you too, she replied softly. I always have. And in that moment, as they lay together, tangled in sheets, it wasn't just about desire anymore. It was about something deeper, something that neither of them had fully understood until now. It was about connection. It was about love. The following days felt like a dream, an intoxicating blur of stolen moments and growing tension. The mansion, once a cold, empty space filled with grief, now seemed alive with possibility. Every corner of the house, every room, every glance exchanged between Jameson and Valerie held the weight of something profound. There was no turning back. James' connection was undeniable. A man who had once ruled a corporate world with confidence, both in ways they now paced the empty halls. But with every touch, every kiss, own home, came a his son Elias, a longing born under a dark cloud, quiet and unspoken, diagnosed with blindness, and had now grown into a full-blown need. There had been no change. Valerie had never thought that she would find herself here. His first words, none of them had come. Only silence between her and Jameson had tried everything, irresistible, colors, toys, music, and with each passing day, but nothing had ever reached between them became almost unbearable. The boy just lay there, the morning eyes wide open, but not seeing. Every time she awoke, the world seemed to shift back into place. Jameson would cradle him close, way to reality, hoping for a sign,
A flicker
Elias
of emotion,
was still the focus of her
but the
care.
silence was
His
deafening.
needs, his comfort.
How could the child
his
he
gradual
loved so
recovery,
much remain so
but she couldn't
distant?
ignore the fact
But
that
then
every
Valerie
moment
arrived.
spent with him was laced with
She wasn't a
desires she
doctor.
couldn't fully understand.
She didn't know the technicalities.
And when Jameson
of
was
Elias's
near,
condition,
the air between
she
them
was just a
crackled
new
with
maid,
intensity,
hired to clean,
that left her breathless,
to care for the house.
One morning,
But when she laid eyes on
Valerie
Elias,
prepared Elias's
she
breakfast
saw
in the
something
kitchen,
no one else did.
She felt the familiar
Something that could
presence
change
of Jameson
everything.
enter the room. His footsteps were soft, but they carried an undeniable force that made her heart race. He didn't speak at first, but she could feel his eyes on her, the weight of his gaze making her skin tingle. It wasn't just his touch she longed for, it was his presence, his proximity. Every inch of him seemed to pull her in, making it harder to resist the overwhelming feelings that swirled inside her. She turned to face him, her breath shallow as her eyes met his. There was a softness there, a tenderness that had started to soften the rough edges of the man she had once seen as distant and closed off. But now, there was something different. His gaze was more intense, more open, and it made her feel both exposed and safe at the same time. Without a word, he stepped closer to her, closing the distance between them. She could feel his
Jameson
warmth,
Cole,
his presence filling
a
the
man
room,
who had once
and
ruled
before
the
she could
corporate
even
world
think,
with confidence.
his lips were on
now
hers.
paced the empty
The
halls.
kiss was slow,
a ghost
deliberate,
in his own home.
familiar. His
Yet
son
still
Elias
electric.
had
Valerie's
been born under a
hands
dark
moved to
cloud,
his chest,
diagnosed
feeling
with
the
blindness
familiar
from birth. heat of his body,
And for
beneath
months,
the fabric of
there
his
had been
shirt.
no change.
The steady
His
rhythm
cries,
of his heartbeat
his laughter,
under her fingertips.
his first words,
The touch sent a shock
none of them
of
had
warmth
come.
through her.
Only
And she
silence.
responded immediately.
Jameson had tried
Her lips
everything,
parting as her
colors,
body
toys,
pressed against
music,
his.
love.
Every time
But
they
nothing
kissed,
had ever reached Elias.
every time their bodies the
came
boy
together,
just lay there,
it felt
eyes
like an
wide open,
unspoken
but not
promise.
seeing, not
The
responding.
connection they shared
Every was deeper
morning
than mere
Jameson
physical
would cradle him
attraction.
close.
It was a
Hoping
bond
for a
that formed
sign,
from
a
something
flicker of
more,
emotion,
a longing
but the
for
silence
intimacy,
was deafening.
for love.
How could a child
for something
he loved
real
so much remain
Jameson's
so distant?
hands moved her
But then
back.
Valerie arrived,
pulling her closer.
She wasn't a
His
doctor.
fingers grazing
She
the
didn't know
soft
the
fabric of her
technicalities
blouse
as
as
he
Elias's
deepened the
condition.
kiss.
Valerie's body
maid,
responded to him
hired to
instinctively,
clean, her
to care hands
for the
sliding
house.
up to his shoulders.
But when she laid eyes on
feeling
Elias,
the strength in his muscles,
she saw something
the
no one
kiss
else
became
did.
more urgent,
something that
more
could
desperate,
change everything.
as the need between them surged to the surface. "Valerie," Jameson whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion as he pulled back slightly, his forehead resting against hers. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her heart hammered in her chest as she looked into his eyes, seeing the raw desire reflected there. "I don't want you to stop," she whispered back, her voice thick with longing. "I can't stop either." And then, without thinking, she kissed him again, her hand slipping under the hem of his shirt, feeling the heat of his skin. The world outside the kitchen faded away as they gave in to the desire that had been building between them for so long. The moment felt right, inevitable, as if everything had led them to this point. But just as quickly as it had begun, the moment broke. Valerie pulled away, gasping for air, her heart racing. Jameson, a man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence. There was
now
now concern in his
empty
eyes,
halls,
concern
ghost in
for
his
her,
own home,
for the both of
his
them.
son Elias.
"We can't,"
She
had been
breathed,
born under a dark
stepping
cloud,
back,
diagnosed with
trembling.
blindness from birth.
This
and
is
for
right.
months there had been
Jameson
no
stepped
change. back as well.
His cries,
his face
his
clouded
laughter,
with frustration.
his first
and
words,
something else.
None of them had
regret,
come.
maybe,
Only
or guilt.
silence.
I know.
Jameson had
But
tried
I
everything.
can't help it, Valerie.
Colors, toys,
I've
music,
never felt
love,
anything like this before.
But nothing had ever reached Elias.
Valerie's chest tightened.
The boy just
She
lay
knew
there,
exactly what
eyes
he meant.
wide open,
The
but
connection
not
between
seeing,
them was
not
undeniable. Every
But
morning,
it was also dangerous.
Jameson would cradle him close.
The boundaries between
hoping
them
for a
started to
sign, blur.
a flicker of emotion.
And she wasn't sure
but the
whether it would
silence
end
was
up
deafening
if they continued down How could
this
the
path?
child he loved
But
so
at that
much
moment,
remain so distant?
all she could focus
then
on
Valerie
was a look in his
arrived.
eyes. She
He
wasn't
needed
a
her
doctor.
as much as she needed
She
him. didn't know the
We can't do
technicalities
this,
of
she
Elias's
repeated.
condition.
Her voice
She was
soft
just a
but
new
firm.
maid,
Not like
hired
this.
to clean.
We
to
need
care
to
for the
figure out
house.
what this is.
But when she laid eyes on
Jameson,
Elias,
we need to be sure.
she saw something no one else
Jameson
did.
ran a hand through his
something
hair.
that could change
His jaw
everything.
tensed as he turned away. He was struggling, torn between his desire for her and the reality of their situation. Valerie could see the inner battle he was fighting, and she felt a pang of sympathy. This wasn't just about them. There was Elias to think about.
There was a trust that had been slowly built between them, a trust that wasn't just built on love or passion, but on something deeper. They couldn't throw that away, no matter how strong their feelings were. "I don't know what to do anymore," he muttered, his voice low. "I can't keep fighting this, Valerie." She stepped forward, her hand gently resting on his arm. "We don't have to fight it," she said softly. "We just need to understand it. We need to make sure we're doing this for the right reasons." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with tension, but it was a different kind of tension. It was no longer about desire alone. A man who was about the choices they had to make. Confidence. The path they now were about to walk empty together. Halls. And even though Valerie wasn't sure where it would lead, his son Elias, she knew one thing for certain. Had been born under a dark cloud. She couldn't walk it alone. Diagnosed with blindness. The days that followed were a blur. And for months, quiet reflection. There had been no change. Valerie and James' cries, his laughter into themselves. His first words, trying to process what had transpired between only silence. The mansion. Jameson had tried everything. Filled with the sound of laughter, toys, music. Now felt more distant, but nothing had ever reached Elias. The silence between them was both just lay there, eyes wide, giving them the space to understand their emotions. Responding, and what every morning unfolded. Jameson would cradle him close, Valerie couldn't shake the connection, a flicker of emotion felt. But the every time Elias looked at her with those how could the child innocent eyes so much remain? She felt the weight of her responsibility. But then Valerie arrived. She had become more than just a caretaker. She didn't know the technicalities of Elias' guide out of the isolation. She was just a trapped in for so long, hired to clean and to care for the house. She had found she laid eyes on Elias. It was late one evening no one else did. Approached her, something that could change his expression, everything. Unreadable as he entered the room where she was sitting with Elias. He had been distant lately, but the moment their eyes met, something shifted. He stepped forward, his hand shaking slightly as he spoke. "Valerie," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion, "I can't pretend anymore. I can't pretend that I don't feel this need for you. It's more than just desire. It's something real, something that has changed everything. I don't know what to do about it, but I can't keep living in this silence." Valerie stood, feeling the rush of emotions flood her chest. She had been waiting for this moment, but she hadn't known what to expect. She walked toward him, their bodies moving closer as if drawn by an invisible force. Her fingers brushed his, the contact sending a jolt of electricity through her. "Jameson Cole, I feel it too." A man who had once ruled the corporate world with confidence, but now paced the empty halls. "We need to be honest with ourselves, with his son Elias, because this had been born under this dark cloud. It's not just diagnosed with blindness. It's about everything we've been through. For months, there have been everything we're still trying to understand. His cries, his laughter, Jameson's eyes softened as he reached for her. None of them had his hands cupping her face. Silence. "I don't know what had tried everything, colors, toys, but I know that I want you in it. But nothing had ever reached Elias." The boy Valerie's just heart raced, as eyes wide open, but not seeing, not responding. Her lips finding his every morning. This time, Jameson would cradle him no hesitation, hoping for no question, a flicker of emotion, just the undeniable pull of silence was finally coming together. How could a child bound by love, so much desire, so distant, the promise of a future that was theirs to shape? As she wasn't a doctor. The world outside seemed to disappear. Of Elias' there was condition. No mansion. She was just grief, a new maid, no doubts. Hired to clean, only the warmth of their bodies pressing together. But when she laid eyes on Elias, the heat of their passion, she saw something no one else did. Both longed for. Something that could change. It wasn't everything. Just about the physical connection. It was about something deeper, something that transcended the boundaries of the house, the past, and everything they had been through. It was about the future they would build together, and in that moment, everything felt right. If you've ever felt the pull of love, the weight of a connection that you can't escape, then you know exactly what Valerie and Jameson went through. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't the desire. It's finding the courage to embrace it, to face the truth that we're all connected by something greater than ourselves. So, if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel, subscribe to this channel. Don't let this journey end here. Hit the like button, comment below, and share your thoughts, because your voice matters. Trust your heart, and join us in exploring more stories that will make you laugh, cry, James
and
and
fall
Cole,
in love all
a
over
man
again.
who had once ruled.
Let's create a
corporate world
community
with
built on
confidence,
connection,
now
trust,
pacing
and love.
empty halls.
You won't want to
A
miss the
ghost
next
in his
chapter.
own home.